right, welcome to the Business for Unicorns podcast. I am not Michael Keeler. If you are a longtime listener, you know exactly who I am. My name's Pete Dupuy. I have been sitting in the guest chair for this special podcast dating back to before I joined BFU in 2021. So probably we're talking 2020 or earlier. And today I am taking control of this side of the table on Michael's behalf. And I have brought my good friend Danny in here. And Danny, I'm going to describe our relationship based on kind of what I would call an accountability partnership. Because a couple of years back, our mutual friend Zach, who I have actually interviewed on this podcast before, told me I had to get kind of into your network, into your I don't know what we'll call it, gravitational pull, because you just talk all things marketing, and some of the things I was saying he thought could be improved by just having more interesting conversations with you. And Zach proposed we do kind of a standing monthly Zoom call where the three of us talk about what's going on in our lives, what is and isn't working, and play the game as business owners and parents of growing families. And it's been really valuable to me since, as I've learned a lot, and you've helped me with projects in my own operation. But I also, as I said off air, kind of watched you launch Azellie Studio, and Azellie marketing is kind of how I think of it. I honestly don't remember exactly what your start date was, but I feel like we watched it happen right in front of us.
Yeah.
Can you do me a solid and just explain to the audience where you live, how huge your clan of children are now because you've got a big family, and what inspired you to start Azellie, what that is?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. No, thanks for having me on, Pete. I was excited to catch up with you too. So this is good. So I live in Ohio. I'm about an hour south of Cleveland, and yes, I have a growing clan of children. I just had my fifth child. So we are creating our own little baseball team here in Ohio. And I started a Zelly Studio out of this desire to create a little bit more freedom and flexibility in my schedule. So formerly I was chief marketing officer for an insurance firm, spent about a decade just studying, fascinated with marketing and branding, really. And so when I launched my own business, I was actually pregnant with my fourth child at the time and knew I needed to kind of step out of corporate and create a schedule that was a little more fitting for our family. The name Azellie is actually named after a saint, Azellie, who had her own lace making business out of the comfort of her own home in the 1800s and raised many kids while doing so. And so that's the inspiration behind it. But in launching Azellie Studio, it was initially focused around marketing, digital marketing primarily. And what I quickly learned in that first year, and I know you remember these conversations, Pete, was that while many small businesses were thinking, marketing was the key to open the floodgates to leads and more revenue kind of coming in, what I was finding in those audit processes and building the marketing strategies was really like branding was the gap that we needed to fill. So branding, I look at it as like the foundation of like getting the messaging right, understanding who the target market is, who we're trying to attract into the business, who we serve best, building out a brand story, getting a lot of these like foundational pillars in place so that when we do launch the marketing, which would be the ads that are going directly to the right customer to pull in, right? When we do launch some of the different marketing tactics, the blogs, the SEO work, the headlines that we're writing, down to the nitty gritty of the exact copy that we're writing, then we know we have the messaging pillars to back it up. We know exactly like the type of work or the type of content that we need to put out there to pull in the right people, and the marketing dollars stretch much further versus just testing and experimenting at the marketing tactical level without having our brand foundation pillars in place, was a lot of churn. What I was seeing, a lot of businesses kind of churn different marketing tactics. And so that's when I shifted a little bit with Azellie Studio to first say, let's focus on branding, let's focus on positioning and messaging and story, And then we build a marketing strategy that kind of dovetails off of that branding, which we're seeing a lot more success in making the marketing work much quicker because we have that foundation in piece. So that's really like where the business is focused on now, is first laying out the brand foundation and then building a marketing plan. And then like almost like right now we're doing day-to-day activation plans to then like let the brand strategy live out and execute essentially.
Okay, I love that, and I feel a little bit attacked because I definitely churn my my approach to scaling the messaging around my brand, and I know I got to be
Sure.
better. You write a pretty cool newsletter, and one of them grabbed my attention recently and prompted me to shoot you a text and say I really want to talk about this on the podcast if you're open to it. So if you don't mind, I want to go down the rabbit hole today of using AI, but specifically as it relates to brand voice and authenticity, because you touched on this stuff and it just spoke to me because my biggest hesitation in using AI for writing better email copy or captions for our social media posts, things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
is that I'm terrified it's going to get filled up with exclamation points and M dashes that don't match up with my tone and approach. And
Mm-hmm.
I really want an expert like yourself to help bring some clarity how us gym owners, and I'm going to say gym owners and PT clinics because you did mention to me that you're currently doing a project for a PT clinic out of a fitness facility in your area. And so you're actually in the space working with people like myself and my colleagues. And I'd love to hear kind of how you think about that as it relates to a couple of questions today. Cool?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So I think a lot of us gym owners kind of put the cart before the horse in asking ourselves how we can use AI to create our brand voice, when in reality we should be defining our brand voice before using AI. And I'm
Yes.
wondering, one, if you think I'm out of my mind for saying that, but assuming you agree with me, how should a gym owner be intentional about defining their brand voice before we even talk about diving into ChatGPT or any other tool that you see as useful?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I run into a similar kind of issue I see across some businesses really just getting started with ChatGPT is they'll go into ChatGPT, maybe give it a little context and ask, write this blog post or write this newsletter or write this on a specific topic. And if ChatGPT doesn't have the context around your brand voice, like detailed explanation around your brand voice, then it's really going to push out generic ChatGPT and dash emoji style content. And we're at the point now where the end user, the reader, is really catching on to when you're using ChatGPT to just like push out a bunch of content and it feels inauthentic. It doesn't feel related to the brand. And so one of the things that I like to do, which, yes, actually, I'm inside a physical therapy clinic who operates is embedded in a CrossFit business right now, and I just went through this whole, brand audit, brand strategy process with them. But is first let's audit the copy that you have previously used within the business. This is getting us closer to what is the brand voice? How do we define the brand voice without just putting a couple things into ChatGPT to give it context? Let's actually build out a complete brand voice guide. And so to do that, we go and audit all of the content not all of the content, but some main pieces that may have triggered a stronger positive result that you've used in the past. And to audit that, though, we can kind of plug that into ChatGPT or any AI tool. Claude also works very well. We can attach some of those samples in there and have a prompt ready to go to say, review some of these pieces, help me understand why these performed well, maybe share some of the analytics around it, share your target market, who the ideal member that you're trying to attract to your gym or your physical therapy clinic, and AI, with all of the data that it has access to, will help you really understand, why some of that content performed well for your business. And then what I like to do is go through the customer feedback. So customer feedback, customer reviews, Google reviews, Facebook reviews you might have, um, anywhere where you're getting, it could be even like if you have support tickets or like complaints that might be coming in internally behind the scenes, like anywhere where you're getting some like customer voice. I like to then plug that information in and grab the into ChatGPT and grab the themes that are coming out from those conversations. Exactly word for word, the way the customers are describing your business, are describing the positives, are describing the pains that they may be having in the solutions that you're offering. Because that's data as well, directly from the members in your gym or in your physical therapy clinic. And pulling that information and pairing it with the content that we just audited, the copy that we just audited, to see if there's any gaps or opportunities in the messaging, right? And so then once you kind of pair that together, you're in a good position to build this like complete messaging guide that is really pulling a lot of data from the actual customer voice, but is also leaning into some of the success pieces that you've had and how that kind of aligns.
Well, it's not
Amazing.
often that someone says something to me that I've definitely never heard or been advised to consider in the past. And you kind of just blew my mind with the advice that we get into the feedback piece as far as feeding it to AI to tell us who we are
Mm-hmm.
and what we want to sound like, which is absolutely awesome. And I never would have thought to do that. I think I'm a little bit more compelled to lean into the critical stuff and understand
Mm-hmm.
where people are finding fault in what we're doing. Not that we're swimming in
Sure.
negative reviews, but I mean, we all know we know the positive things people say. We like to pat ourselves on the back and feel good about that stuff that's rolling in. But the reality is, a lot of the positive reviews that people are putting on the internet on behalf of these fitness businesses were prompted by the businesses themselves, suggesting, can you please go leave me a 5-star review and say something nice?
Mm-hmm.
So those come through as a little less authentic to me than the ones where people are like, I've always loved this business, but they did this thing and it kind of pissed me off. That stuff's
Sure.
real. Nobody was coached up on
Yes.
how to say those things. So it's one thing if you've got like that 1-star or 0-star type review, the maniac who's just out there to cause pain for the business.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody who's kind of giving you a middle of the road or what I'd call underwhelming review, that's the stuff that I think is gold to feed into these platforms and figure out what we're missing. I'm wondering to
Sure.
build off of that. I know you do a lot of your homework on the clients that you work with before you even talk to them. Do you ever find that you're kind of executing that process before even engaging with them and you find huge blind spots in their self awareness?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'd say most of the time I find these blind spots because a lot of these gym owners are, I'm in this physical therapy clinic I'm currently working with now, or any small business really. They don't have an in-house marketer full time, working on the marketing, or maybe they do have an in-house marketer, but or a small team, but they're churning a bunch of work as quickly as possible, right? So it's really hard to get a more strategic view from a branding and marketing standpoint. So um, when I kind of jump in, almost acting more so like as a fractional marketing person inside their team, right? That's when I'm finding like, oh, the messaging that is tends to be going out uh, looks very similar to maybe their competitors' messaging. And maybe within the industry, we've come to feel like this is the type of messaging that we need to be sending because it's working for Gym A, Gym B, Gym C. Um, but really, here's what the customers are actually saying. Here's what is working for them, or here's what's not working for them. And so that's where those blind spots happen is like, let's look directly at what the customers are saying and let's pull messaging ideas from there. And the beauty of that is, some of the businesses I work with have hundreds of reviews and it's a lot of data to mine through manually. And so where AI comes in is like that's how I use it mostly is like just looking at the data as a whole and giving me the high level overview of what the customers are actually saying, what they're wanting, what their problems and pain points are, and then matching the messaging up. So that's where the opportunity really lies from a messaging and copy standpoint.
Awesome. Okay,
Hey there,
so
Business Unicorns podcast listeners. If you haven't had a chance yet to leave us a rating and a review on wherever platform you listen to this podcast, it would be so awesome if you take just a quick second to do that. And here's why. Number one, by leaving us a rating and review, you'll allow our podcast audience to grow so more gym owners can build a life and a gym they love. And number two, by leaving us feedback, you'll help us shape the future of the podcast so we know what you like, we know what you don't like, and we know what types of content is resonating and what else should we create for you. Thank you so much for your consideration. And now back to the show.
Awesome. Okay, so we're kind of at the stage where we've, in theory, established our brand voice, understand what our
Yeah.
avatar is actually looking for. How do we make the jump into getting AI to write authentically in our voice? I'm
Yeah.
interested.
So
How do we take all the information you just churned, and you're sitting on this pile of meaningful data? What are the prompts? What's the approach?
so so what I like to do then is I ask ChatGPT or Claude for a very detailed messaging guide. And this thing could be like 10 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not reading through line by line exactly what's in this messaging guide, but it can include different components of like the do's and don'ts of certain words that you should be using, headline examples. It can help with content strategy, right? There's just a lot of information inside this messaging guide. And then I build a tone of voice guide from the messaging guide. And so the tone of voice guide could also be 3 to 5 pages, let's say, that really kind of gets to the nitty gritty of exactly the language you should use. And then I use those two guides to train a ChatGPT on the messaging guide and the tone of voice guide. I use what's called a custom GPT. It's like a AI agent essentially. Now, I should say, let me preface this, say I'm not an AI expert. I'm constantly experimenting and testing. Currently, what I'm doing with my clients right now is we're getting the messaging guide, the tone of voice guide, we're attaching it into a custom GPT that we will then use that GPT project or custom GPT every time we go to write an ad, a newsletter, an email copy, like a sales email copy, any type of copy that we need to write, we use that particular thread so that the language is then, that the AI model is trained on the messaging and tone of voice.
You make it sound easy, but it's a little overwhelming to me. So let's say you're a gym owner that
Okay.
doesn't have the resources to invest in an expert like yourself. I think I could get to the point where I've collected the data we've talked about. That seems user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable I could get through the messaging guide piece, and then from there extract a tone of voice guide. How does
Mm-hmm.
the person with minimal time and minimal bandwidth and budget take the tone of voice guide and just start?
So ChatGPT has the free version or the $20 a month version. And what you can do with the tone of voice guide and the messaging guide, you attach it just like you would in an email. So it even has the little paperclip in ChatGPT. Click the paperclip, you you attach those two guides in there, and you say, write me a advertisement, or let's say a marketing campaign, a 6 ad marketing campaign that I can use on Facebook, or I could, or it could be a 6 sequence email campaign that I can send. Please use my messaging guide and tone of voice guide so that it sounds authentically like me. Now, when you get that back, ChatGPT will spit it out and give it back to you. There's still going to be things that you're like, well, that's not really it, or that's not. And so then you want to, I would say it would get you 80% there.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have almost a marketing campaign that's about 80% there that you didn't have to hire a marketer to come in and do. And you would go in and tweak a little bit of the language or ask ChatGPT, continue to prompt back to say, like, this line doesn't sound like us. This is also not part of the messaging guide. I don't know where you got this. Because occasionally it hallucinates, or occasionally it throws in an emoji when you ask for no emojis, right? So you continue to prompt, but you will get about 80, 85% there. And then the human element, I think, is still so critical today. I think applying your human self and really reviewing the actual copy that you would be sending out before it ships.
Beautiful and perfect answer. Totally understandable. I don't want to minimize the importance of what you do because you just saved like dozens and dozens of hours of work and tinkering,
Mm-hmm.
and you gave it to me in 90 seconds. So let me go on record as saying I think people should still be spending with marketing professionals like yourself, but some of us need to kind of like scratch that itch and then realize like this is good, but Danny could kind of put it on steroids. All right, I have one last question. With what
Sure.
you've given me, if we were to make this like even, well, you made it very tactical, but if we were to make this more tactical from like a weekly workflow standpoint, what would a
Mm-hmm.
simple weekly workflow with AI look like for, let's say, a PT clinic if you were getting started tomorrow?
Yes. So I think it comes down to which tactics, marketing tactics, can you systemize and operationalize in your business on a weekly basis? And so let's say you send a weekly newsletter to your patients or your clients, your customers, members. Um, let's say you do a weekly newsletter. So then maybe you designate one morning at the beginning of the week, let's say Monday, Tuesday morning, I'm going to spend an hour pulling topics that I think are relevant. Now, because we already did the work of understanding the pain points and problems that our Google reviews are telling us, if we have, hundreds of Google reviews and that data to pull from. I should also side note mention, I mean, you can even scrape the internet and understand what the target market is saying that may not be patients or members inside your actual gym, but are still within the target market to understand what problems they're facing and then ask it, pull a topic for this week. You pull that topic for the week. You ask then through that thread where your brand messaging guide and your tone of voice live, you ask them to help draft out the outline for the newsletter. And maybe that's the headline, the subject line, a couple bullet points of what would go in the newsletter, the call to action that you might have at the end. If you like that outline, you then ask ChatGPT to draft it. If you don't like that outline or that topic isn't sitting well, you find it right. And so then once that draft is ready, you're about 80, 85% there, you applied the human touch to it, and you go then and ship that newsletter. And that can be done, I mean, in less than an hour, essentially. But to get started, I would just start with something as simple as like, what's one thing that I can do on a weekly basis, a newsletter, for example, that I can ship within an hour.
Awesome. Okay, let me recap from the gym owner perspective. See if I got this right. We're going to start by collecting as much data as possible. Understand both how we've put ourselves out on into the world on the internet, what ChatGPT or Claude can pull, who we are based on our own efforts, but then also who we are based on feedback from others, be it positive or negative. And we're going to pull
Mm-hmm.
that all into step two, which is to create some guides. So that would be a messaging guide, and then that would be a tone of voice guide. And then we're going to use that information to inform our future requests of AI to kind of prepare our content in our voice. And your advice from there is really just break this down into manageable. I gave you a week as far as content creation goes, and you got hyper specific with if kind of like if you can't do it in under an hour, you're doing it wrong. Am I right there?
I think eventually over time, yes, I think that's the advantage that we have right now in this AI era. And to your note about, still hiring marketing professionals, like I mean, my shift to AI is to teach businesses how to leverage these AI tools now to be able to handle the marketing in-house. Because a lot of times, uh, there's small businesses hiring these marketing agencies who are using the AI and not really getting to that authentic voice that you have inside your gym. You know your customers best, and so if you're using the tools to train on your model, like yes, you can efficiently create really good marketing that attracts the right customers that you want to bring into your business. And so Yeah, you're spot on there, but it can be done super efficiently now with AI.
Well, and what I really appreciate about what you just said, and it's why we've always got along, is that you're not using fear tactics in explaining
Mm.
it from the marketing, the studio owner's perspective. You're not saying you'll never do this as well as I can do it because I have the human voice. AI it's not going to work. You're actually doing what I think great fitness professionals do when they work with, say, like a Gen Pop person. They say, if I do my job really, really well, I'm going to make you so good at executing the basics that I cease to be a worthy investment for you. And that's great. That means we
Mhm.
did this right. I make you a better advocate for yourself in the weight room or in any fitness capacity. And it stinks to lose business, but how cool is it if you help people become kind of like their own self-serving fitness professional? And it seemed to me that that was
Mhm.
kind of what you just said. I want to help you with your marketing to the
Absolutely.
point where you need to stop investing externally. I want to make you a marketer is basically it.
Mhm.
And that's a lot different from like you're my client, you're forever my client until we hate each other and then you're the enemy.
Sure.
All right,
Yeah,
I want
sure.
you to
No,
give you the opportunity
I
to tell people in our community or help in whatever capacity you like. Is there any way you'd like people to connect with Azellie or Danny Kimball in particular, or any resources you'd like to point people toward?
No, yeah, I do have a workflow that I've built out that I use in my business when I'm working with other businesses that I'm like handing over to you all to be able to run through this complete process yourself. So in it, it's just a Google Doc. It's nothing fancy. There's no um, fancy like graphics or anything to it. It's just a Google Doc of text, but it does have all of the prompts that I use to audit the content, to audit the reviews, to spot some of the gaps and opportunities you might have, to build the messaging guide and tone of voice, and to then create your own version of a GPT, which is essentially like a thread that you can plug those in and be able to kind of create your own content. So I'm going to send that to you, Pete, and you'll be able to kind of get that out to everybody or whoever wants it, whoever reaches out. Um, and then I would be curious to hear how it works for you all. So if you get any feedback, I'd be curious to hear that. But I'll shoot that over to you after we get off here.
Love that. Okay, so anyone who's listening and wants to get their hands on that guide, just shoot me an email, pete@businessforunicorns.com, and I will make sure that Danny's information gets kicked your way. Danny, lastly, on social, where can they find you?
Social media, you can find me on LinkedIn at Danny Kimball, or you can visit my website at azellestudio.com.